Chapter 6, 580 verses. In 1905, Albert Einstein was working as a patent clerk in Bern. He had no university position. He had no laboratory. He had no research budget, no graduate students, no institutional affiliation of any significance. What he had was a question he had been holding for 10 years. What would the world look like if you were riding alongside a beam of light? In that single year, he published 4 papers. Any one of them would have secured a permanent place in the history of physics. Together, they changed the conceptual foundations of the discipline permanently. The photoelectric effect, Brownian motion, special relativity, the Massenergy equivalence. 4 papers, 1 year, 1 clerk in a patent office. The question is not how he did it. The question is, what does it look like when a mind operates at maximum force on a problem it has been preparing for its entire life? The Vivekachudamani is what it looks like. The text is 580 verses. Shankara wrote it. The attribution here is secure, the scholarly consensus strong, at some point during a productive life that ended before he turned 33. The title means the crest jewel of discrimination. Crest jewel, the most valuable ornament worn at the highest point of the body. Discrimination, Viveka, the capacity to distinguish what is real from what is apparent, what is permanent from what is transient, what you actually are from what you have been mistaking yourself for. 580 verses is a long text. In the context of Sanskrit philosophical literature, it is not exceptionally long. What makes it exceptional is density. Every verse is doing work. There is no padding, no repetition for its own sake, no sections that exist merely to connect other sections. The text is continuous maximum force argument for its entire length. It begins with one of the most formally structured openings in the corpus, a precise statement of the human problem, a precise identification of its cause, a precise identification of the solution, and a precise description of the student qualified to receive the solution. 4 moves in the first 10 verses. The problem is suffering. The cause is the misidentification of the self with the not-self. The solution is discriminative knowledge. The qualified student is the one who has already completed the phase 1 preparation, who has the Tattva Bodha's taxonomic grid, the DRG Drishya Viveka's Vedantasara's witness location, the macrocosm-microcosm map already installed. This is why the phase 1 texts had to come first. The Vivekachudamani opens by assuming them. The text structure follows a clinical logic that the meta-analysis of the corpus maps with precision. The first movement, approximately verses 1 through 200, is diagnostic. Shankara identifies the disease with increasing specificity. The gross misidentification, you take yourself to be a body. The subtle misidentification, even after correcting the gross error, you take yourself to be the subtle body, the mind, the intellect, the ego sense. The causal misidentification, even after correcting both, a residual sense of individual separateness persists at the level of the bliss body, the deepest sheath. Each layer of misidentification requires a separate instrument for its removal. The text provides all of them. The second movement, approximately verses 200 through 400, is the operation at maximum force. Here Shankara deploys the sheath withdrawal exercise in its complete form. Not as a brief pointer, as in the Tattva Bodha, but as a 200-verse clinical procedure. Each sheath is identified, its characteristics enumerated, its claim to be the self-examined, and the examination found wanting. The food body, real, present, experienced, but changing, finite object of awareness, therefore not the self. The vital body, real, present, experienced, but dependent, conditioned object of awareness, therefore not the self. The exercise continues through all 5 sheaths with the same ruthless formal structure. At the end of 200 verses, what remains is not nothing. What remains is the witness that was watching the entire exercise. The DRG Drishya Viveka's 46-verse regression performed at 5 times the length, with 5 times the philosophical force. The third movement, approximately verses 400 through 520, is the positive installation. Having cleared the ground by removing the misidentifications, Shankara now performs the identification. Not you are not the body, but you are Brahman, not the individual witness awareness you found in phase 1 practice. Brahman, the undivided, unlimited, self-luminous ground of all reality. The identification is argued on multiple independent grounds simultaneously. The Mahavakya argument, the Upanishadic sentence, I am Brahman, cannot be false, and its subject and predicate must refer to the same entity, which requires that the individual self and Brahman are not different. The witness argument, the witness you found is not bounded by your skull or your biography. Investigate it carefully and no boundary is discoverable. The consciousness argument, consciousness cannot be an attribute of matter because matter is itself an object of consciousness. Consciousness must be primary, not derivative. 3 simultaneous lines of argument for the same conclusion. This is what maximum force looks like in philosophical prose. The fourth movement, verses 520 through 580, is the phenomenology of recognition. Shankara describes what it is like to know what you are, not as a mystical state report, but as a precise description of a cognitive position that once genuinely inhabited is stable. Not bliss in the ordinary sense, the text is careful about this, not the absence of thought or sensation or engagement with the world. The recognition does not produce a new state. It discloses that what was always already present, the self-luminous, unchanging awareness, was never absent. The recognition is not an achievement. It is a discovery. You find something that was there all along, hidden not in a remote location, but in the very act of looking. The text closes with what is, in the entire Advaita corpus, one of the most precise characterizations of Jivanmukti liberation while living. The liberated person walks in the world. They engage with the drama of the constructed person because the constructed person continues to function. They circumstances, eat, converse, experience, respond preference to, and discomfort. But the identification with the drama has ended. The self-luminous awareness that they discovered is not disturbed by what appears in it. They are the flaw. The drama is what appears on the flaw. The flaw does not become the drama when the drama intensifies. The Vivekachudamani is the centerpiece of phase 2 because it does what no shorter text can do. It accompanies you through the removal of every misidentification, closing every escape route, for long enough that the student who reads carefully cannot find a gap through which to retreat. The Drg Drishya position. Viveka that gives you the Vivekachudamani witness takes that position and drives it all the way to its logical terminus. But it is not alone in phase 2. The Upadhyaya Sahasri, 1,000 teachings, is Shankara's other major prose work, and it operates by a different mechanism, where the Vivekachudamani is an extended argument with a student whose objections are anticipated and answered. The Upadhyaya Sahasri is a teacher's manual. It presents the Vedantic teaching in its pedagogical unfolding, how you introduce the concept of the self to a student who has no prior preparation, how you advance the teaching as understanding deepens, how you handle the specific confusions that arise at each stage. Reading it is reading Shankara watching himself teach. The effect is unexpected. The Vivekachudamani shows you the conclusion with overwhelming force. The Upadhyaya Sahasri shows you how someone arrives incremental at shifts, the conclusion moments understanding, the specific impede stage. For each of partial confusions the student that who understands the conclusion intellectually but finds it not yet operational, who can state I am Brahman accurately but does not find this statement transformative. The Upadhyaya Sahasri is the diagnostic text. It identifies which stage of the unfolding you are actually at, which confusion is currently the operative obstacle, and what the teacher's next move should be. The meta-analysis names this pairing as the corpus's most important structural redundancy. 2 texts, destination. Different the mechanisms, Vivekachudamani same is the destination, presented with maximum force. The Upadhyaya Sahasri is the road map of every route that leads there. Together they constitute what no single text could accomplish. There is a question that serious students of this material will have reached by now, and the Penrose voice requires that we address it directly rather than let it accumulate into resistance. The question is, if Brahman is already the case, if the self-luminous awareness is always already present, if there is nothing to achieve and nowhere to go, why is this so hard? It is a fair question. The texts say, with considerable force and consistency, that the recognition is not an achievement. You are not becoming Brahman. You are not acquiring a new property. You are discovering what was always the case. This should be easy. Discovery is easier than creation. And yet the Vivekachudamani runs to 580 verses. The Upadhyaya Sahasri runs to 1,000 teachings. If you add the phase 1 texts and the remaining phase 2 texts, You have several thousand pages of preparation for a recognition that the texts simultaneously insist is not an achievement. Here is Shankara's answer, and it is the right answer. The difficulty is not in the recognition. The difficulty is in the preparation for the recognition. What stands between you and the recognition is not ignorance of a fact. It is the accumulated momentum of a misidentification that has been running for as long as you have been alive and been reinforced at every moment of that life. Every time you said, I, and meant the body, the reinforcement deepened. Every time you made a decision from the position of I am the one who wants this, the groove deepened. Every time you felt threatened and protected yourself, the mistaken identification was treated as real and became more real in its functional consequences. The texts are not teaching you something new. They are dismantling something very old, and the dismantling requires exactly as much force as the construction required, which, given that the construction has been running for the entirety of your life, is considerable. 580 verses is not excessive. It is calibrated. Part 3 continues through the remaining Phase 2 texts, the Panchadashi, the Aparikshanabhuti, the Naishkamya Siddhi, the major scholastic works, before the transition to Part 4 and the radical texts. Each of these deploys the Phase 2 operation from a different angle, using different technical apparatus designed for different types of students. The Naishkamya Siddhi is for the student who requires philosophical rigor above all else. It is the most formally argued text in the corpus after the Brahma Sutra Bhashya. The Panchadashi is for the student who requires experiential mapping. Its 15 chapters move from logic to perception to the phenomenology of bliss, in a sequence that contemplative functions as curriculum. A complete the Aparikshanabhuti is for the student who has the conceptual framework in place and needs direct instruction for sitting practice. The corpus does not have a single path through Phase 2. It has several, each designed for a different kind of mind. The meta-analysis identifies this as the corpus's most sophisticated structural feature, approached from a single multiple destination independent directions, such that every student who has completed Phase 1 correctly will find at least one Phase 2 text that speaks to their particular cognitive profile with full force. What they all share is the operation, the S-down arrow move fully deployed, scope contracted from I am the body-mind all the way to I am the awareness in which the body-mind appears, and then the pivot, the turn from contraction to identification, where the contracted awareness is shown to be not smaller than Brahman but identical with it. You have been contracting toward an expansion. That is the paradox at the heart of Phase 2, and the next chapter is where the paradox resolves.